excited you are to be here. You're all welcome. You're all welcome. Please, if you're so excited to be here, I would like to see a response with an emoji. I can see Justina Ezurike, you're highly welcome. I can see Enoch. Enoch, you're welcome. I can see Prajdi. Prajdi, you're welcome. So delighted to have you here. I'm also seeing Ms. Shalom Ibo. You're also welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're connecting from. Farouk, I see you. Nicole, you're highly welcome. Zita, Robinson, you all are welcome to Renew What's COP28 debriefing. I'm so excited to have each and every one of you here. Please, I would also want you to put on the comment box where you're connecting from, I would love to have each and every one of, I would like to know where we are all connecting from. I am connecting from Nigeria. Greetings from Nigeria, big greetings from Nigeria. Robinson is from, oh, wow, nice to meet you, Robinson. He's actually hooking up from Trinidad and Tobago. You're highly welcome. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Farouk. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Shalom Ibo. Tito, you're all the way from UK. Thank you so much. You're highly welcome to Renew Watts Technologies COP28 debriefing. I'm so excited to have all of you. Mr. Patrick, you're highly welcome. Mr. Joseph, you're highly welcome. Kevin Pruma, Enoch is connecting all the way from the Pearl of Africa, Uganda. Good evening, good afternoon, you're welcome. You guys are so amazing. I'm so excited to have each and every one of you here. And please, I would also want you to express your feelings regarding COP28. I would also want you to express your feelings. I also want you to express your feelings regarding COP28. Please do that in the comment section while we welcome each and every one of you here. You're highly welcome.
I'm just going to take it from here. Can you confirm that you hear me? Oh, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you so much, Justina. Oh, I see Justina is joining from Nigeria. We're welcoming everyone and trying to get everyone into the webinar. And we'll just start after we see much more people join in. So please, if you've not yet introduced yourself, please a kind introduction in the chat box and tell us where you're joining in from. I'm Ivo Shalom Chilaru, and I'm joining in from the US. So I see, oh, Justina joining in from Nigeria. Welcome, Justina.
Oh, thank you.
And also, I think just to make this fun, if you were at COP28, you can share with us on the chat box. Yes, I was at COP28. No, I wasn't at COP28. And then if you're at COP28, I want you to also give us your reactions. What's your reaction about COP28? Was it something that you expected, or wasn't it something that you expected? Were the outcome something that you didn't expect? Oh, hi, Gideon, joining from Nigeria. You're welcome, Gideon. We'll be starting in 3 minutes, just trying to get more people to join. For those that just joined, and we are making quick introductions about ourselves, just your name and where you're joining in from. And if you can, please, you can also feel free to turn on your videos. I mean, we would love to be seeing our pretty faces too. That's if you can. If you're in an environment which you can, please go ahead to turn on your videos too. Oh, I'm yet to see reactions from COP28. Does it mean that everything went well for those that were able to attend? Oh, hi, Freshly. So lovely to see you.
Hi, Shalom. Wonderful seeing everybody.
We'll just give it over to you in some minutes.
Sure, looking forward.
Thank you so much. If you've not made any introductions, we are going around to do introductions. Please, your name and where you're joining in from. And I'll go ahead to welcome everyone. Okay, sharing my slides. I hope we can see this. All right, I'll be going into the order of the occasion today. So you're welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to have each and every one of you here. It's so exciting to see youth trying to play their role, and not just playing any kind of role, but playing meaningful roles in the energy transition. So it's my pleasure to host the COP28 Debrief. And my name is Ivo Shalom Chilaro. I'm the founder of Renewables Technologies. And before I give it over to our first speaker, which is a very inspiring speaker, and I'm really looking forward to our section, I'll go ahead to tell you what Renewables is all about. So we were founded in 2022, and we promote climate change awareness and advocacy. We provide access to clean and affordable energy, and we equip young people with renewable energy designing skills for a sustainable energy transition. Currently, our mission is basically focused in Nigeria. So, and we are looking to impact the undeserved and marginalized areas of Nigeria. And to achieve this goal, we organize renewable energy awareness campaigns. We design literary programs, we design curriculums, and we provide technologies to empower youth and students in local schools, communities, and people at a grassroots level. Currently, we have impacted over 3,500 youth and collaborated with organizations to train, including children with disabilities and market traders, on climate science, solar energy basics and installation, waste management systems, recycling, sanitation, and renewable energy careers for youth. And we have an amazing product that we'll be launching next year. And this kits visions to provide people at a grassroots level with energy access and storage, and we desire to prepare a competent workforce, resilient towards promoting the energy transition and fulfilling the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 4, 7, and 13. It's my honor to welcome you to this amazing webinar, which is a subset to the works that we do at Renewables Technologies, which includes renewable energy and climate change awareness. And for this section, we'll be focusing more on one of the greatest climate conference, that is the United Nations Framework for Climate Convention on Climate Change, the Climate Conference COP28. And the major highlights will be on the Global Stocktake. We'll talk about the COP28 negotiation outcomes. We'll also interact with the Global Renewables Hub, and we'll also further take on some of the pledges that were done in terms of climate financing. So it's my honor to welcome the first speaker. This is the speaker that is very close to my heart. I was so impressed by her profile, and I was really amazed and very happy when she accepted to take on this section with us. So before she goes ahead, I'm going to read a little bit about her bio for us to see how amazing she is. Please permit me to read her bio, and then she will introduce herself further. All right, our first section will be from Ms. Rashida Singh. Ms. Rashida is 11 years old, and she has been recognized as a Prime Minister National Child Awardee, That's the highest civilian honor under 18 years. I mean, that's amazing. And if you really think that's amazing, I want to also see like your emojis on the chat box. And she's the founder of Prashdi Forest Foundation and the Green Pillar. Prashdi is also one of the youngest delegates at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28. She was the youth speaker at the inauguration of the SDG Pavilion, the UNDESA. She was also the youngest panelist in the opening panel discussion of the 5th UNFCCC PCCB Capacity Building Hub. She's the youngest fruit forest creator of India by India Book of Records. Prashdi is the brand ambassador for the nationwide girl literacy campaign, the Betty Bashir Betty Pado by Tamil Nadu government. She has also been appointed as Child Ambassador of Green Tamil Nadu Mission. Prashdi has been featured in Wikipedia for her plantation program and environmental contribution. She was the youngest G20, Y20, U20 official consultant at IIT Kapoor and the youngest G20 and Y20 national speaker at Kashmir. Her documentary has also been showcased by the National Geographic. Please, with a warm welcome. I mean, like I could go on and on and on to tell you about Miss Prashdi, but I'm just going to stop here. With a warm welcome, round of applause, and with your fire chat emojis, please make welcome Miss Prashdi Singh for her section. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shalom, for that amazing introduction. And thank you so much, everybody who's been sharing their kind words. And I'm very pleased to be over here to connect with all of you. So as Shalom mentioned, I am the youngest delegate of the United Nations Conference of Parties, the 28th meeting that was held in United Arab Emirates. And I am Prasiddhi. I am 11 years old. And I am over here to represent Zen Alpha, the generation after Gen Z. So to represent children and youth. I'm the founder of Prasiddhi Forest Foundation and the Green Pillar. Prasiddhi Forest Foundation is a non-profit organization focused on action and nature-based solutions. And the Green Pillar is a climate education platform focused on spreading environmental awareness. Till now, I have planted 130,000 trees and created 92 plus Prasiddhi forests across so many different, across 92 places across India with villagers, farmers, groups, companies, NGOs, children, youth, government officials, everybody, so that I can create a difference to heal our earth. And believing in creating real, spreading awareness, I have organized conducted about 100 plus awareness sessions and workshops and inspired 80,000 individuals across 20 countries. And this is not just from today. This is my journey for the past 7 years. So being a nature lover at the age of 2, having this unconditional bond with nature, to becoming a tree planter due to the catastrophic natural calamity, the Vada cyclone, which was held in 2016 at the age of 4. So I'm from India, and in India, I live in the southern part of India, Tamil Nadu. And over there, a very catastrophic natural calamity had hit, the Vada cyclone. And treating trees like my friend, I was so disheartened to see the impacts. So I decided that I wanted to take real action. And so I started to participate in tree plantation drives. And after that, at the age of 6, I became an environmental advocate, connecting with children and youth, villagers and farmers all across. And today, I am a global mobilizer at the age of 11, having been the youngest delegate at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, G20, Y20, and Harvard Model United Nations. I've been featured on Wikipedia and multiple different places. In fact, one of my recent initiatives is the Green Brigade program in 200 schools of Tamil Nadu, where I'm going to these 200 rural government schools and giving a fruit sapling to each and every child, implementing the climate action curriculum and planting 1, 5, or sometimes 10 big banyan trees to promote biodiversity. to support and enhance the biodiversity, and also to support the ecosystem of that school. Because I believe it is very important to empower us, to empower the next generation to create a real difference. On the completion of planting 100,000 trees, it was also featured on National Geographic. The Prime Minister of India, Honorable Narendra Modi ji, has also appreciated my work and recognized it with the Prime Minister National Child Award. These are a few photographs of the G20 Y20 Kashmir, which was held. And of course, there have been a lot of different projects, awards. And in fact, I was there in UAE last year in 2022 to receive the Global Child Prodigy Award from Sheikh Al Nahyan, which is one of the most prestigious awards given to young people who are doing something, the born to shine. And today I am very happy to be over here in front of you and to connect with each and every one of you. So let us start with the basics. What is COP28? We have all been hearing so much in the newspapers and the press and the negotiators and the world leaders. Everybody is talking about COP28. But what is COP28? It's a very big question. So COP28 is the Conference of Parties, or the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which is held every year. It is an annual event hosted by the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. And this event started in 1995 in Berlin, Germany. Till now, there have been 28 meetings which have been successfully hosted. So the last meeting, which was COP28, which concluded last week, was in UAE, United Arab Emirates, Dubai. And next COP28 is planned to be hosted in Azerbaijan. There are 200 nations and heads of states who are part of this climate change conference, who come together to discuss and negotiate, to agree on negotiations and taking real action to tackle climate change and the climate crisis. So who come over here to COP28? So there are three major stakeholders who come over here to COP28. The first are children and youth, who are very important, who come over here to express and to raise voice about the importance of protecting our planet. But I over there did not only go to raise voice, but to also show the power of creating real impact and making a real difference. How climate action on ground is what is required. Because talking is not enough. All of us, each and every individual, has to come together to create a difference, especially children and youth, because we cannot leave our fate in other people's hands. So young environmentalists and activists come together to raise voice and to take real climate action. And world leaders, as I mentioned, of 200 heads of states, come negotiate. There are negotiators who represent different countries. So there are people who come on party badges, people who come on behalf of United Nations, people who come on behalf of the host country, for example, UAE, or before that it was held in Egypt, before that in UK, people who come over here to represent their own country, and of course, organizations, NGOs, UN entities like UNICEF, UN, UNFCCC, UNEP, WHO. This time we also had World Health Day. So the director of WHO also came. This was one of the first time that it happened in any of the COPs. So these are the three main people who come over here to discuss and to work on climate action. So what was my experience over there at COP28, being the youngest delegate, representing children and youth voices and real nature-based solutions in climate action? So it was a brilliant experience. Every day was a new chapter, with events where I was speaking and talking about my work in climate action, where I was attending and participating in negotiations, discussions, policy meetings, debriefs, various different activities, and me also attending sessions and workshops. Because you go there to definitely talk and represent, but you also go to platforms like COP28 to learn, so that these projects can be implemented on a ground level as well. So one of the couple of major events where I was there. So the first was the SDG Pavilion. So the Sustainable Development Goals Pavilion in the official launch. So I was there. I had the opportunity to share the stage with our President of General Assembly, Mr. Dennis Francis, Mr. Lee, who has been working in the UNDESA, who is General of the Economic Affairs, and also Mr. Violetti, who came on behalf of Mr. Simon Stell, who is the Secretary, as in the head of UNFCCC. And I over there went to represent the youth voice and the call to action that I mentioned in my talk, that SDGs can provide an action agenda to each and every one of us. That how, while we face these climate disasters and impacts, we need to treat the next 7 years while we reach 2070 as an opportunity to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And I focused on nature-based solutions, in which I'm majorly working, because I work on agroforestry, lake restoration, indigenous tree plantation, community development projects, and most importantly, mangrove plantation. So I also represented how important it is for children and youth and nature-based solutions to be promoted when it comes to sustainable development goals. I was the youngest panelist in the panel discussion on the past, present, and future of capacity building in the inauguration of the 5th Capacity Building Hub. So I was there with the head of Climate Action Network International, the vice chair of Sabasta, one of the more famous policymakers, Nathalie, and Eva Young, who is there into music and climate. And I was there as the youngest panelist, talking about the importance of 360-degree impact. How, if we want to make a difference, we need to work with government officials, villagers, children and youth. Everybody needs to be involved in the project if we want this project to survive, to become a part of the tradition of that community. Now, capacity building can play a vital role when it comes to that. So my major line was that the experience of past, the passion of future, and the importance of protecting the passion of the present and the importance of protecting our future is what is very important. The third was where I spoke about harnessing the power of nature-based solutions in Climate Life Pavilion. So this pavilion is about how music and art and entertainment can promote the voices of environment. And over there, I spoke about how art and nature-based solutions and coexistence can play a vital role, and also how about a case study in reforestation, community engagement, and children and youth. I also got the opportunity to attend the World Climate Action Summit, WCAS, which was on 1st and 2nd December of COP28, where I met with the Secretary of United Nations Framework of Climate Change Convention, Mr. Simon Stell. I saw Honorable Prime Minister delivering the fact that the 33rd COP is planned to be held in India. And he also set targets to bring the emissions intensity down by 45% by 2030 and increase the share of non-fossil fuels to 50%. And the president, of course, of UAE and the president of COP28 and 200 other world leaders were present in WCAS. COP28 is also about networking and making collaborations and connecting with people. So these are just a very few, because being there for the first week, connecting with so many people, connecting and talking about the importance of taking real climate action has been huge. But these are a few major people. So Dia Mirza, who is the United Nations Environmental Program advocate, Mr. Sadhguru, who is a very famous leader in soil, Mr. Simon Stell, we all know, the youth, one of the person who is there in the United Nations Secretary General's Youth Advisory, the NAS Daily founder, CAN International's head, Louisa Mabulo, who is working with UN Women, the Climate Change Minister of India, and also the head of United Nations PCCB capacity building. There were multiple different interviews which I took part in, because my main reason to go there was to connect, collaborate, and spread the message of the potential we all have and how we can create a difference on a global level. I also, as I mentioned, attended several different sessions on various different topics, because we all need to increase our horizon. We all need to learn. And if we want to work and improve this climate space and tackle climate change, we need to understand each and every corner of the problems of climate change and the possible solutions to this climate crisis. So I attended various diverse sessions, from farming to circular smart society, to digital payment sector and sustainability, net zero, and even energy transition. Even though they might not be directly connected, but we all need to learn each and every aspect and understand how together we can make a difference. And this is, each and every day, I used to go in the morning to the Blue Zone, which was the UNFCCC zone, and connect with people, talk about my initiative, be over there. And we all, no matter you are there at COP or not there at COP, we all need to take our action. And we can always stay updated about the negotiations and the discussions that take place at COP28. So coming to a few key highlights, the negotiations and the declaration during this conference. So there were three main focuses: climate finance, inclusivity, and tackling climate change and climate crisis. So a lot of funds were allocated. Inclusivity in terms of children and youth and indigenous communities was actually shown this time at COP28 compared to the others. And of course, mitigation and adaptation. So this is a little climate finance commitment counter, which was there. And two major ones were loss and damage, which was $792 million, and the Green Climate Fund, which was $3.5 billion. And right now, this, this is actually less in when it comes to loss and damage, because this was implemented for the first time, and despite so many different communities, people, so many different lands facing these natural disasters, are not able to get those funds in place so that they can reorganize themselves. Because mitigating is important, but also adapting and being able to balance what we are losing because of these natural calamities is just as important. So an increase in the adaptation and loss and damage fund is extremely essential. And a step has been taken this time, and this might be the beginning, but this needs to grow. This needs to be encouraged further on all different levels, on a larger scale as well as on the grassroots. And two main things which happened first time at COP. The first was definitely hosting the first ever high-level Global Stocktake Committee meeting, signifying a groundbreaking initiative in advancing the global climate effort, and also the creation of the first time of the loss and damage fund to address the various different impacts of climate crisis and the natural disasters. So these are a few key highlights, because while we were addressing different aspects like climate finance, loss and damage, the global stocktake, inclusivity of children and youth and indigenous communities, there were a few very important announcements and highlights of COP28. So the top 8, which I found most relevant, have been given over here. So the introduction of Altera, a groundbreaking climate finance focused investment initiative. Apart from that, the World Bank Group pledged to elevate its climate finance goal of $40 billion by 2025, allocating 50% to mitigation and 50% to adaptation efforts. And 134 global leaders endorsed COP28 UAE's declaration on sustainable agriculture, food systems, and climate action. And as I mentioned earlier, even UAE and the WHO joined forces for the first ever health day. So there were lots of different important things. Top 8 have been listed, and you can also go on the new COP28's website to see detailed summaries of each and every day, each and every negotiation. These are a few declarations by countries on topics like hydrogen, climate relief, recovery and peace, nature and people, cooling, climate finance, and energy efficiency, most importantly, because we are over here with RenewWatt's technology, which focuses on renewable energy. Energy efficiency definitely plays a vital role when it comes to renewable energies, which was endorsed by 130 countries. And of course, this is definitely the beginning. But to keep global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, as called for in the Paris Agreement, emissions need to be reduced by 45% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. Because only when we work hard, we work together, and most importantly, three key things which are important when it comes to this is first, having a sense of hope. Second, having a sense of reality. And third, having a sense of responsibility. When we have all these three, especially in platforms like COP28 and these global climate change conferences, the impact can be on a massive scale. All we need to do is work together. And I have believed in this transformation, just starting in the garden with a few shrubs to actually creating forests, planting 130,000 trees in 92 places with students, villagers, farmers, government officials going everywhere, planting trees, doing nature-based solution projects. If I have started alone and created such a big eco-army through this transformation across 20 countries with 80,000 individuals, why can you not do it? Why can we not do it? Why can the country leaders and the youth activists and the organizations not do it? Because we really need to believe in the power. If I can do it, we all can do it. So finally, I would like to say that believe in your potential, because the planet desperately needs impact creators to heal our earth, because the world is facing unprecedented challenges and humanity is faced with a choice to go on an unsustainable trajectory or to stop, listen, and learn from nature. So we all need to join our forces to create a better planet. So finally, I will say that nature is ready to evolve. Are we humans ready to change? Thank you so much.
Wow, that was amazing. Wow, that was amazing. Please, I want to see our reactions. That was super amazing. Thank you so much, Rashdi. Thank you so much. And I picked a lot of interesting points from your presentation, talking about nature-based solution, trying to make us understand that everybody has a role to play in the energy transition. And we can see it obviously that you don't need to have to be at COP to be able to impact in the world. You can start from wherever you are to do what the little things you're doing, and you see that you're truly a part of the change makers making the things happen in the energy transition. And I also love this quote saying that we should all have a sense of hope, sense of reality, and a sense of responsibility. Our planet needs us here. Oh my God, thank you so much, Rashdi. And I'm going to be leaving the floor for any questions. Please, you can just signify with a raise of hand, or you can drop it in the chat box. I'm just going to leave about 30 minutes for that, while our second panelist will be preparing to take the stage.
Thank you so much, Shalom, for your kind. Thank you so much for your kind words. And I really want to collaborate with each and every one of you. And as I mentioned, together we can create the difference.
Truly. Thank you so much. Thank you so. And can we reach, before any questions come up, can we reach you via social media? Please, can you share with us how to reach you?
Sure. So let me share you my account in the chat, and I will be more than happy to stay in touch with each and every one of you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. I've shared the link.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, you can see all my details, the website, all my social media, and I will be more than happy to connect with all of you to take this collaboration of ours to the next level. I'd be happy to address any questions.
Thank you so much. I believe the questions might come in. I think people are still trying to gather their thoughts, but if you still have a little bit time, you can stay around. And if you are rushing towards any event, maybe I will collect the questions and send it to you. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, Rashmi. Please let's give a one round of applause again for Ms. Rashmi. I have to put my reactions here too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'll be inviting the second panelist. This section, let me read a little bit of his bio and then he'll go ahead to make his presentation. Our second panelist for today is Mr. Patrick Amaebi. He's an environmental engineer by degree. He's a green champion by heart. He leads operations at the Prime Initiative for Green Development, and he drives sustainable solutions in Africa. He's also the South-South coordinator for the African Union International Climate Change, Nigeria, and he connects and empowers young leaders for climate action. Please, with a round of applause, let's welcome Mr. Amaebi Patrick for his section. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be here. All right, so let me introduce myself again. My name is Patrick Amaebi. I was privileged to have attended the just concluded COP28. It was really an eventful one, quite overwhelming, but it was also very much interesting. So I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, so I'll be talking briefly on some of the key outcomes of the just concluded COP28. I know this year there was a lot of expectations by so many people, more especially in the energy sector and the loss and damage. And some of the key outcomes of the negotiations as follows. We uh, um, there was an agreement reached on transitioning away from fossil fuel. There was also an agreement reached on increase of climate finance. And there was earlier mentioned by Pashti. And then there was the issue. So let's just quickly dive into each of these outcomes that we are negotiated during the COP process. And first, one of the key agreements at the just at UAE, there was this debate between should there be a phase out or should there be a phase down. And one significant outcome for the agreement was that the language used in this agreement was phased and just transition. There is still a bit of debate as to what the interpretation is. Although a large number of civil society groups were calling for a complete phase out, while some other groups were calling for a phase down. So this debate is still on. What this means is that the COP28 agreement on transitioning from fossil fuel signifies a significant step forward. We are expecting that moving forward, other COPs will have a stronger negotiation on a complete phase down of fossil fuel. But then this also means that we most likely will see an increase in investment in the renewable energy sector. And secondly, another key outcome of the negotiation process was increase in climate finance. And some of the agreement there was doubling of adaptation finance. And this is to help developed countries commit to doubling annual funding for adaptation efforts in vulnerable countries by the year 2025. And there was also the issue of funding mechanism that was raised and deliberated on. And more importantly, this particular one is of interest to me, the loss and damage fund. Um, it signifies a very major steps in terms of climate justice. And we have most world leaders, most developed countries making pledges. I think we had a total of over $300 million secured, and hopefully we should see an impact, right? We should see that vulnerable communities should be able to access this fund, right? Because they are in the forefront of the whole impact of climate change. Another key negotiation outcome was the focus on nation base. Um, Over time, there has not been a concrete framework on biodiversity, and this year COP we had the global biodiversity framework. An agreement was reached on a new framework to protect and restore biodiversity, and it's a very great one for everybody. I think nation-based solutions over times have proven more effective in terms of restoring the biodiversity. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay. So another key agreement was addressing equity and justice. We saw that there was a lot of talks on just transition, and the negotiation process were quite complex. You had most of the African countries who were negotiating for just transition. You have a lot of negotiation on that, but not so much willingness on their part. And this is as a result of the fact that most African countries see that there is a technological gap between the Western country and the developing nation. So transiting from a fossil-based economy to renewable economy seems a bit difficult for most of these African countries. And so you have a lot of their negotiators going to negotiation and not firm on exactly what they want in terms of transition. Um, I was opportunity to engage one of the young negotiator from one of the African countries, and his thoughts were that his country are not negotiating for a complete phase out of fossil fuel. The reason be that they are technologically backward, and that it will take them quite some number of years to bridge that gap. And so then the whole essence of the just transition is that nobody should be left behind. And where we are experiencing these gaps in terms of technology, in terms of knowledge, then it's difficult to have a just transition. I'll still go back to my first this transition away from fossil fuel. Now you have world leaders making this phrase phase and just transition, and it was not specific, right? And there was no specific timing as to what the implementation is going to be like. So it still leaves rooms for deliberation, and hopefully we should have a concrete explanation of what the term phased and just transition means in subsequent COPs. And most interestingly, there was this fossil fuel and no purification treaty. Negotiation began on the process of treaty to restrict fuel infrastructure. So there's talks ongoing, right, to stop any further building of infrastructure that has to do with fossil fuel. But then the implementation of this is key because we have a lot of countries, more especially in the developing countries, who still base their economy on fossil fuel. For example, I'm a Nigerian, and one of the major source of revenue for the country is fossil fuel. The country economy is so based on fossil fuel that even the removal of fuel subsidy is having so much impact on the masses. And as advocates, it then boils down to, okay, how do we explain to those people that, oh, there's a global transition going on? So it means that a better explanation as to what that term phased and just transition needs to be made. Moving forward to addressing equity and justice, one of the key agreements or one of the key points that was raised during this year's COP was to enhance participation of civil society. I think this year COP recorded over 7,000 participants from across the globe. Nigeria alone had 1,000 plus delegates. The issue then boils down to who are the people there, who are the people meant to attend COPs. We have, personally to me, I think there was a lot of underrepresentation. Um, we have a lot of communities who are facing this impact of climate change greatly that we are not represented, in the sense that I know there was the battle for getting accreditation to attend the conference, then the whole finances to attend. So these limitations, right, makes it difficult for the people that are supposed to be there to be there. Although we had quite some number of indigenous people present in the call, but a large number of them were not present. So there is this issue of underrepresentation. Personally, for me, I hope to see changes in Nigeria, seeing that we had over 1,000 delegates. I hope to see changes, more especially across every government parastatal. I hope to see a sustainable framework from every agency. It's not just attending COP, but implementing these things down to the grassroots, down to the grassroots. It's so sad that not many people know what COP is. Not many people know what it represents, what this global agreement has to do, the impact it's going to have on them. And then it's the responsibility depends on us now to take these messages down across the communities. In terms of energy, right? There was a lot of talks on energy. I was privileged to be in the SDG 7 pavilion, and you have a lot of private companies, private sector people present who are keen on investing in renewable energy. But one of the key issues that was raised was the perception of locals, the perception of people in the community level. What perception do they have about renewable energy? And one of the side events I was opportune to attend, we had an indigenous person present, and this lady gave a perception that a few years ago, solar was installed in a community. Within a short period of time, the solar failed. So that this perception in the community that solar is not reliable, and one of the key message that was being passed within that pavilion, the arena pavilion and the SDG7 pavilion, was an increase in innovation, and we tend to see an increase going forward due to the COP28 agreement. And another key thing to note, is the gender inclusivity. I was also opportunity to be in the capacity building hub in one of the sections, and um, globally there's a rise of um, gender inclusivity. A lot of countries are including it in their policies, and I think to me that's a good step forward. Right? Um, we we tend to see that in most of these countries, opportunities are not given to ladies. Well, I think this year we had a lot of opportunities given to ladies and young people. Young people. So I think the outcome for this same COP wasn't really up to expectations as per se, but then it raised a building block for further negotiations as related to energy transition and
Hello, Mr. Patrick.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Hello. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. And Mr. Patrick, are you still there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Sure.
you now.
Network issue.
That's fine.
Okay, so let me quickly summarize. We've seen quite some number of progress in this year's scope, and I'm looking personally for me. I'm looking forward to the implementation. I think okay. Let me just go through the slide one more time. Um, some of the challenges to me, I think we are facing is the implementation gap, in the sense that over the years there has been a lot of ambiguous promises, pledging no challenges. I think we are going to face this, the implementation. Um, what leaders change. Then on our challenge, I think we have this agreement is that there's a gap in their visions, right? The current effort is not enough to keep the the global warming limit to 1.5 degree, and moving forward, I think more effort needs to be made in terms of negotiation and everything. And in terms of equity and justice, right, there are still concerns as to okay, who gets this fund, how do um, developing country access this fund, what are the mechanisms in place for them to access this fund, and lastly, there's this the issue of civil society's participation. It's a serious concern. I know quite some number of persons who even had funding to attend the conference could not get accreditation, and we hope that moving forward, COP29 at Azerbaijan, all of these gaps should have been closed. Thank you so much for listening. I think that's the end for me here.
That was an exciting, that was so exciting. Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick. I believe we all got him, despite the fact he was having some network fluctuations. I'm so excited to hear much about his outcome and his take from the COP28. I think he happens to be one of the participants from Nigeria. Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick. I'm really delighted. And please, if you have your comment section, if you have comments, please, questions, you can do that in the comment section so that we can, Mr. Patrick can actually answer those questions. And Mr. Patrick, please, before the questions will definitely come in, can you please tell us how we can, get in touch with you through your socials? So if there are questions that needs to be asked and also for network purposes, please, Mr. Patrick. Okay, I think he's still having some network glitch, but I want to appreciate everyone and also Mr. Patrick once again for his exposition. And for those who are just coming in now, I think you missed the very first part when we had Prashida Singh. She actually gave us a very, I would say an outstanding and mind-blowing her achievements and also her strides in ensuring and planting of trees and also having this form of relationship where we as humans, we have to have a better relationship with our planet to ensure a sustainable environment for us to thrive in and also our generation. And also Mr. Patrick has been able to give us an exposition or has been able to debrief his experience and also his takeaway from the COP28. And he, in his last comment, though he was having some network glitch, he was talking about the challenges that has to do with the implementation gap and all of that, of which I believe, I also, every other green warriors out there believe that by the next COP29 and also before the next COP29, most of these challenges that we are experiencing will be resolved, and we are hopeful that it's going to be resolved. So thank you so much, Mr. Patrick. Next on our panelist, the next panelist will be Mr. Mujib Khan. Before he starts, I would like to give a brief. I have to read his bio. Mujib is an international development young professional working with governments, private sector, and civil society to build a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable world. An engineer by training, his previous engagements include serving intergovernmental organizations, namely the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, UNECE, and South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC. He plays an active role in youth empowerment through his engagement as a global shaper with World Economic Forum and United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, that's UNFCCC. He was the IRENA Youth Delegate and also has been recognized as a future sustainability leader by Mazda, Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company. This is what I know about Mr. Mujib Khan. I believe if we give him the mic and he comes up as a panelist, he is going to tell us more about himself. So you are highly welcome, Mr. Khan. Thank you, and over to you.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, for the kind introduction, and to all the speakers who shared their insights. It's an absolute pleasure to be joining you today for this COP28 debrief session. So I'll start by providing some more details about my background and work. I'm Mujib, originally from India, currently based in Abu Dhabi, UAE. As you mentioned, my full-time role is as an international development consultant, which basically means I work with governments, private sector, and civil society on a variety of issues, including the energy sector, environment, and climate change. I've also been actively involved in youth empowerment through my engagements as a core team member of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency under the Major Group for Children and Youth, which is the official engagement mechanism for young people in energy-related topics at the United Nations. I was a speaker at the SDG Summit on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly this year. I'm also the impact officer at Global Shapers, Abu Dhabi, which is an initiative of the World Economic Forum that believes young people are at the heart of solution building, policy making, and lasting change, and aims to drive dialogue, action, and change through impactful projects in communities both locally and globally. And as mentioned, I was the IRENA Youth Delegate 2023. So I've been working through my various roles for a couple of years now, and this was my first time that I attended COP. I think I was going through an article on Financial Times. I think it amazingly summarizes in 2 sentences what the atmosphere was like. So it mentions like every UN climate COP ends with a mix of relief, exhaustion, and bafflement. The 2 weeks at COP28 in Dubai was no exception. So while COP28 was indeed a milestone moment for the world to unite around tangible climate action and deliver concrete solutions, as we all know, achieving this requires collaboration across civil society, government, industries, and all sectors of the economy. I was there both for the first and the second week and engaged with diverse stakeholders that included senior diplomats, government officials, representatives from multilateral development banks, UN agencies, private sector, and of course, civil society. So there is quite a lot to unpack and discuss. And today I will structure and focus on 3 key elements. The first would be the Global Renewables Hub. The second would be the key pledges. And third, my reflections as an attendee. So firstly, the Global Renewables Hub at COP28 Blue Zone. So this was organized by IRENA with Global Renewable Alliance and REN21 as strategic partners, to put the rapid scale up of renewable energy at the heart of this year's COP. So the pavilion brought together policymakers, industry experts, and key stakeholders from around the world together to drive the renewable-based energy transition. So for those who may not be familiar, let me give a brief overview of IRENA, which is the International Renewable Energy Agency, a leading global intergovernmental agency for energy transformation that serves as a principal platform for international corporations, supports countries in their energy transitions, and provides a state-of-the-art data and analysis on technology, innovation, policy, finance, and investment. So IRENA basically drives the widespread adoption and sustainable use of all forms of renewable energy, which of course includes bioenergy, geothermal, hydropower, so on and so forth, in the pursuit of sustainable development, energy access, and energy security for economic and social resilience and a prosperity and a climate-proof future. IRENA comprises of 168 countries and the EU, and together they drive the work of the organization. So the pavilion was quite busy, both in terms of the sessions and the audience, given that a lot of critical issues were discussed and some major pledges and announcements were made. Now, let me share with you some of the key session details, right? So, of course, as we all know, the discussions with heads of state and ministerials on tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency was one of the key outcomes that's been most spoken about at COP28. So that was, again, primarily driven by IRENA in collaboration with the Global Renewable Alliance and, of course, the COP28 presidency and other stakeholders that were involved in this. We had specific sessions that talked about accelerated partnerships for renewables in Africa, catalyzing Africa's green future. Now, that partnership aimed to drive vision and political leadership to work collaboratively under the guidance of African nations to rapidly scale up all forms of renewable energy to underpin resilient and inclusive green growth in the continent. They also explored strategies to harness international cooperation for mobilizing finance, technical assistance, and private sector participants, and proposed like country-specific approaches to expedite the energy transition. Now, staying on the topic of Africa, there was another session that touched upon navigating investments in renewable technologies. Now, firstly, we have to understand that there is a need to support Africa's energy transformation and climate action to implement transformative actions towards electricity interconnection to enhance security and foster economic integration. So in communicating the Agenda 2063 vision of meeting universal access to electricity and sustainable development to high-level decision makers, including ministers, wind and solar technology experts, and other stakeholders gathered and shared their insights and visions in terms of how do you actually realize the African single electricity market and the continental power systems master plan. Now, one of my personal favorite sessions was titled The Impact of Crime on Critical Material Supply Chains for the Green Energy Transition. Now, a recent IRENA report on geopolitics of the energy transition, critical materials suggested that a lack of formal structure and the wide geographical reach of artisanal and small-scale mining can result in extraction, trade, and sale of commodities via unofficial channels. Hence, a multi-stakeholder approach to strengthening action for preventing and combating criminal and illegal activities in the mining sector, while at the same time promoting sustainable extraction and procedures and formalization is critical and very important. There were also sessions that focused a bit more on the importance of community-led projects, specifically on renewable energy. And there were also discussions around the need of investments in human capital. As we all know, we need to ensure that people are front and center whenever we talk about climate change and the energy transition itself. And hence, it's important that there were platforms and possibilities and discussions of how do you actually invest and scale up human capital through public-private collaboration and partnerships. Now, let me transition a bit more towards what were like some of the youth-specific events that happened at the arena itself. So you had a session on enabling youth action on SDG 7, where you had the IRENA senior leadership participate along with youth. So it was an intergenerational session. It was conducted in a fishbowl format. So for those who may not be familiar, fishbowl format is where guests sit in circles of chairs and the audience sits in concentric circles around them. And then you get started by asking questions to each other. So it basically brought, as I mentioned, different stakeholders together for a dialogue and showcase the impact youth actions have on Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which is ensuring access to clean and affordable energy. It also provided a platform to identify existing and new opportunities for enabling youth action on SDG 7, and also developing a repository of youth action and opportunities in the sustainable energy sector. Another session that I was leading and co-organized and participated in was titled Decarbonizing the Planet, Youth's Contributions to the Energy Transition, where we touched upon how youth innovative projects are actually contributing to the decarbonization of the sector itself, and what are the key barriers, but also opportunities that lie ahead. And another thing that I wanted to highlight was during COP28, young business leaders from IRENA's New Gen Renewable Energy Accelerator program were recognized for their unique sustainability solutions at COP28. So for some background, earlier this year, IRENA, in collaboration with Social Alpha, a nonprofit organization based in India that supports startups, and NL Foundation, a global nonprofit, focused on supporting the development of studies and research in the energy field, launched something what's called the New Gen Renewable Energy Accelerator program. Now, the goal of the program was to empower youth to be active participants in the energy transition, but firstly providing with the tools, knowledge, as well as support needed to develop and implement their ideas. So this was the first edition of the program where they brought together 40 youth innovators and entrepreneurs from 20 startups with the renewable energy and climate technologies market through ideas, solutions, and novel innovations. And they actually benefit a lot from training, mentorships, and they all were brought together and recognized at COP28. So these were some of the sessions that I wanted to highlight, but there were many more interesting panels. If you're really interested, all recordings of the session, as well as the key takeaways and pledges from IRENA, are available on the IRENA website and YouTube. Feel free to check it out. Now, moving to the second aspect where we talk upon the commitments, right? I think some of them have already been covered by other speakers, so I'll quickly go through them and probably touch upon and spend a little more time on the ones that I feel were really important and critical, and what are the key outcomes and takeaways of those pledges itself. Because I think by now everyone's pretty familiar with like the key pledges, but I think so what are the actions and the next steps, and what are the key takeaways on how different stakeholders will now have to work in making sure like the pledges are actually brought to action itself. So I think, of course, the United Arab Emirates and IRENA launched something called Empowering Lives and Livelihoods, Renewables for Climate Action, an initiative designed to close energy access gaps, focusing on food security, health, gender equality, and job creation. There was also the launch of Utilities for Net Zero Alliance as part of the Marrakesh Partnership event, where they had an understanding of the different transformative levers in the energy and industry that were identified in the 2030 breakthrough and the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda of the Marrakesh partnerships. And of course, as we mentioned, there was commitment to work together to triple installed renewable energy generation capacity by 2030, doubling renewable energy efficiency, and committing to put the principle of energy efficiency as the first fuel at the core of policy making, planning, and major investment decisions. So more than 120 countries signed up to this pledge, which, to be honest, will require a big leap in effort from what has been done before. If we look at it, it took 12 years from 2010 to 2022 to achieve the last tripling of renewable capacity, right? Now, this has to be done in the space of the next 8 years. So meeting the goal will be hard, but achievable, according to analysis. There were other commitments around food and agriculture, finance, nature and water, health. And again, I won't get into the too much details, but what I want to spend a bit more time on is touching upon what actions do we have to take and what are the implications of this commitment, right? So when we say governments and businesses must now collaborate to accelerate renewable energy and energy efficiency improvement. So firstly, we'll have to look at it from increasing policy support for deployment that must be paired with the local context requirement, as full localization might be difficult, but regional diversification will be an important tool going forward. We also need to think about the value of demand-side flexibility, the risk of stranded assets due to decline in demand for fossil fuels from rising renewables, and what's the pressure on the supply chains and competition for critical minerals and skilled labor as we look to rapidly deploy and accelerate. Some of the actions that need to be taken is that supply chain players should embrace policymakers' engagement to work collectively and collaboratively. Energy efficiency solutions should aim to provide, options and leverage modern tools such as AI in order to enhance optimizations. And also policymakers should provide the enabling platforms such as the different accelerating permitting, redesigning the energy market, de-risking the different kind of projects. So just putting in place the different kind of platforms that will actually help them and support different stakeholders in bringing everyone together and driving this change. When it comes to specific commitments and outcomes, when we're talking about youth, so I think the COP28 presidency delivered a lasting legacy for youth inclusion in climate decision-making with the announcement that the role of the presidency youth climate champion will be carried forward to future COPs. So parties have officially agreed and negotiated text to institutionalize the role of youth climate champions within the UNFCCC process. Now, this mandates that all future COP presidencies to facilitate meaningful participation and representation of youth in future COPs. As we all know, around 1 billion children worldwide are currently at an extreme risk from the impacts of climate change. While many young people are already leading climate action across the globe, they still have limited into climate policymaking. So this is a great positive step that we see. Moving on, we have COP28's flagship Youth Day that was hosted, and it presented the Youth Stocktake, bringing together thousands of young people from across the globe under the banner of climate action. We also had the Global Youth Statement that was finalized at COP28, which was held from 26 to 28 November in the lead up to COP28. It basically synthesized the collective climate policy demands of children and youth from over 160 countries across the world and supported by tens of thousands of signatories in terms of bringing forward what the collective demands of youth from all over the world are. So these were some for very high level kind of commitments that I wanted to touch and briefly talk about. Of course, as I mentioned, there were different thematic announcements on each days. There were different stakeholder groups that announced different things. And in the interest of time, I won't get into too much details. But towards the last section, I would just like to provide my reflections on my experience as a participant for the first COP. So as we all know, this was a flagship event. It had a great audience and attendance of over 60, 70,000 people who were there in attendance. It was the most inclusive COP ever. the focus here was on unite, act, and delivering. And I think that's what the presidency was all about, taking an innovative and inclusive approach to the 2-week program to have those open consultation on like thematic areas and making sure that focus is given to all the topics holistically and underpinning the different technologies, inclusion, frontline communities, and finance that needs to be taken into consideration, while at the same time collaborating with different groups such as women, indigenous people, local communities, people of determination, faith-based organizations to make sure that we work collectively as one unit in delivering what's required. Some of the other notable features that I would like to highlight was, of course, you had the dedicated youth children education skills day that brought everyone to the COP process in itself. In terms of what I see like room for improvements, I think it's already been highlighted, but I'd just like to echo and reiterate that the agreement lacks quantifiable targets or substantial financial aid for adaptation. It falls short of the pivotal moment we needed as a global community to bring adaptation from being a second-tier priority in the climate process to being prioritized equally within mitigation. So that, I think, is one of the things that I would say would have definite room for improvement as we look forward to the next COP in Baku, Azerbaijan. And I think I would also like to provide a local perspective here since I'm based in the UAE. So ever since the UAE was set to host COP28, what I have witnessed firsthand is the kind of change in the UAE and the region itself, right? So the road to COP was quite successful in raising awareness and bringing momentum on climate action. From school children to business leaders, everyone was talking and discussing about COPs. Many local companies started thinking about and discussing sustainability. We saw a lot of commitments from small and medium enterprise to all the way to big corporations on increased reporting on their emissions and also launching the sustainability strategy. I mean, this goes to show that there's a lot of impact that a host country can have in terms of driving transformation and increasing awareness about the whole topic in itself. So in conclusion, I would just like to say that youth are vital actors when it comes to energy transformation and climate action. They're agents of change for economic growth, innovation, environmental protection, and we need to ensure working with them in a collaborative and meaningful way. Zooming out, the goal now for governments and industry should be to make sure that these promises don't end up just as hot air. Pledges must become reality, and we must have accountability. Once again, thank you so much for your time. I'm more than happy to stick around to answer a few questions. If not, I'll drop my social media links and you can definitely get in touch. Thank you so much.
Oh my, this is so amazing. I was expecting to see like the round of applauses and the expressions go on, the reactions go on, because this is so much amazing. And before I would reflect on some of the things that you have mentioned, Mr. Mujib, a lot of us here, I'm going to ask on behalf of a lot of us here, we have seen that the 2024 call for applications for the Arena Youth Forum is ongoing. So how can we youth be able to leverage that platform to truly be the agents of change, just like you have mentioned? How do they approach this particular application, being that you've been a delegate to this program and you also directly work with Arena? I think that's the first question I think that is on most of our minds.
Well, thank you, Shalom. Yes, you are right. I think the applications are now live on the IRENA website. I think IRENA is actually one of those organizations that actually meaningfully engages you through its various platforms and gives youth an opportunity to contribute to its work and different work streams as well. So as you mentioned, the IRENA website is, you can access the application form through the IRENA website. Please go in and fill in and share your details. The selection process is on a very competitive basis and based on who would be the right fit. It's an all expense paid trip, which IRENA covers, and just making sure, and they want to make sure that youth have a voice in terms of bringing them with policymakers in supporting what they're doing. And apart from that, as I mentioned, they also have different work streams and programs which you can check on their website. It's quite interesting, the kind of work and the impact that they're creating along with youth.
And that's amazing. I guess we can all hear that Arena mainstreams youth, And that's something also that I have encountered being a part of the IACT peer educators training, and seeing a lot of innovations with Next Gen, with the teaching for Net Zero Awards. It's something that we should be very excited for. I mean, as youth, this is our time to really like contribute to the energy transition. And I love a lot of the things that you talked about, being an engineer and understanding how the energy transition is not just about commitments and ambitions, it also takes from the engineering perspective. I truly understand some of the key points that you have highlighted here. And I believe that every other person understands these key priorities as well. So thank you so much, Mr. Mujib, for your time. I don't see any further questions, but if there are any questions for Mr. Mujib, please let's go ahead and drop it in the chat box, and he'll be hanging out a little bit to attend to them. But if the questions do not drop while he's on the call, I'm going to send the questions to him directly. And once he provides the answer, I'll be sending it back to the group. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much more. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mujib. We're going to be going on to our next panelist. This is someone very close to my heart. We've become sisters in the, not just in the energy transition forum, but in the generally in the climate space. So it's my honor to welcome Ms. Cassandra Dewan. And before she takes on the floor to tell us about her experience at COP28, I'm going to be reading a little bit about her bio to you. And trust me, the bio didn't cover a lot of what she has done. This is just a tip of the iceberg of what Ms. Cassandra has been up to. So with all honor, I'm going to be reading Ms. Cassandra's bio. So she is an audit to optimize engineer at some SLB with over 10 years of professional experience. She has worked both upstream and downstream with individuals across all disciplines and departments globally. She is currently a PhD candidate in metallurgical and materials engineering at the University. Okay, this is Brazilian. Okay, let's try this.
You could just say you're a PhD.
Oh, thank you for coming to my rescue, where her research focuses on sustainability and decarbonization. She is also a Yale Emerging Climate Leader Fellow. With a round of applause, please let's make welcome Ms. Cassandra. Thank you so much for honoring the invitation. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Shalom. I'm trying to share my screen. Just give me a second. Yes, I can share. Okay, let me know if you guys are seeing. Which screen are you seeing?
COP28 Debrief takeaways.
Are you seeing the slide or the presentation?
We're seeing the presentation. We're seeing the slides itself, like on PowerPoint.
The slides itself? Okay, no problem. And I just want to make sure you're not seeing the PowerPoint, because for some reason it's showing me that you're seeing the PowerPoint itself where I have my notes.
I think it's everything. It's showing the whole PowerPoint page. Yeah.
I need to stop sharing 1 second because I have work stuff up. So I just want to make sure I'm sharing the correct screen.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now I think I'm sharing the correct thing.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start by, there are 3 things that Shalom asked me to discuss. One is my COP experience. The second thing is any takeaways I had based on my experience of being in the energy industry. And then the last thing is what can young people or youths do to get more involved in climate change as well as in the sustainability agenda. So before we jump into it, I just wanted to highlight 2 things that was important for us from an oil and gas perspective, or now we like to see an energy industry. So the first thing was that Dr. Sultan Al-Jabi was the president of COP28, and this signified a lot, or there was a lot of talk or noise around it, especially in our industry, because he is the CEO of ADNOC. ADNOC is the natural oil company in Abu Dhabi, and he's also the UAE's environmental minister. And then the second thing that we've been discussing within the last week or 2 within the oil and gas industry is this phase. with states transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, accelerating action in this critical decade so as to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science. And this is the first time ever that you actually see that fossil fuels was cited in the agreement. And it explicitly states that we need to transition away from them. So, being at COP, that was something. At one point, I stopped saying I work in the oil and gas industry or what company I work for, because it was sort of like people were attacking you, blaming us for everything that's happening. And I think that the main fact that he said we need to transition away, that phase, I think is very important because it's not going to happen overnight. And we all know it's going to take time to get to the point where we no longer need fossil fuels. So this was my first experience at COP, and being there, I think that the UAE stands for what they wanted, which was an inclusive COP. And it's the first time that oil and gas companies were there. For example, SLB had a booth in the Energy Transition Hub on the Green Zone. And again, there was an Energy Transition Hub that had oil and gas companies or energy companies, even Baker Hughes, one of our competitors, were there. And for me, it was quite interesting to see the interest as well. The Energy Transition Hub was full throughout the entire event. And something that the other speaker mentioned was youth. And you could have seen youths everywhere. Everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, there were youths. And it was so nice and refreshing. And it was also interesting to hear their point of view. I knew some youths that were presenting on panels where I felt very proud to see them there voicing their opinion and, challenging as well the other generations or eloquently stating their points. And I think, moving forward, it is good to see the youth involved because at the end of the day, they are the ones, the generations below us that will feel the most impact of climate change. So, being the first time at COP, I wish some people gave me, I think my slides are moving. I wish people gave me some advice, and the advice I wish was like basically how to navigate it. And I was trying to get that before, but I was so busy with work and I was looking online for maybe someone wrote a guide on how to approach COP. And the first day was very overwhelming. The place was huge. The distance between the blue zone and the green zone was a lot, right? And even the blue zone as well, to walk from one side to the other was 15 to 20 minutes. So the first day for me was first figuring out that distance or time, because the following day I had a talk in the green zone in the Energy Transition Hub. And then after I had to go to the China Pavilion for another talk in the blue zone. So after figuring out that timing, then I started going to different countries, different booths. And it was strange because the booths were in rooms, but you could actually hear other presentations. And I think that is something they need to improve on next year, because there are a lot of sessions that I went to and it was difficult to pay attention because you were hearing the other sessions. So what I did was I went to different booths and I asked for their program for the week. And that way I was able to go home the night and then map out which sessions I want to attend each day. And the days were very full. So basically I tried to get there at 10. Then I sometimes left around 7, sometimes 8. And every night I had a dinner. Some company invited me or some organization. So for me, it was a full week. And I was exhausted by the end of it. And, I didn't know how people were surviving the 2 weeks. I have friends that stayed the 2 weeks. But I think maybe because I knew I only had 1 week, I tried to pack as much as I could into it to get the best out of it. And there were some things that surprised me because we were at a climate change conference. So there were taxis. People were using these taxis where I felt like they should have just walked. So my opinion was, if you're young, you're capable to walk, you should walk, and you should plan your schedule adequately to have time between sessions or whatnot to walk. I saw all the people walking. There were people in wheelchairs or whatnot, and everyone pushing them around. But then there were people that were using the taxis. So I think that's something that we talk about climate change, but yet what are we doing as individuals? And then I was surprised that a lot of the coffee stands were selling coffee in plastic cups and plastic straws. And the food was very expensive as well. So what I did was figure out which foods had free coffee or free food. Like even in Energy Transition Hub, they had a lot of booths with free coffee, and they were in paper cups. So I think that is something we need to be a bit more aware of when planning events. We say it's a sustainable event, but what are the measures we're taking to make sure that it's sustainable? The cup cards were made out of plastic, and I heard the years before they were paper, but I think plastic probably was a good idea because it's like a little souvenir. We're not going to throw away our cards, we're probably going to keep it as a memory. So I think maybe that's why they did plastic identification cards instead of paper. So now the energy industry key takeaways that we've been discussing a lot within like my office and among my friends. One is the loss and damage fund, and this may not be important from our energy industry standpoint, but for me it's important being that I am from the Caribbean. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and it's a small Caribbean island. And this is one of the reasons why I got so involved in climate change, because over the years, I've seen the impact of climate change on my island. I've seen the impacts of constant flooding. Every year, we get floods. We have to get resources, whether it's to clean houses, get food for people, as well as we lose food within the country because it's very small. We depend on this agriculture. When it's flooded, they're destroyed, and then we need to import food. So food shortage becomes a problem, and then food becomes expensive, and there's already a high unemployment rate. Then there's increase in earthquakes. In 2018, I experienced a 7.2 earthquake where I was in the office by myself. And I was like, oh, there's just another earthquake, because it became to a point where we get earthquakes like every twice a week or something. It's really regular now. And it'll be little earthquakes. Sometimes you're sleeping, you get it during the day. But it just kept going and going, and it got worse. And there was a complete blackout in the country. I had no contact with my parents. There was traffic everywhere because buildings, there were damage in buildings, and everyone was trying to rush home and whatnot. So that was another effect that I felt. And then also in terms of the country itself, it's being eaten away by erosion. So the Caribbean islands, and I know the Pacific islands, are strongly feeling the effects of climate change. And this loss and damage fund cannot cover. It's a start, but we still have a long way to go, right? I think the main thing or the highlight of COP was the fact that this was agreed on the first day, and it became like a big talking point. And I hope it wasn't to distract from anything else, but I think that was the highlight. The first day that this loss and damage fund was agreed about. And the total amount pledged to date is 700 million, which is low compared to what we really need, right? And I study UAE because I tried to do a comparison of the amount they pledge compared to the pledge per citizen, and they obviously pledged the most per citizen compared to the US. I think the US was like a bit of a joke to most of us, because we kept saying only 7.5 million, and then we know they are the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. And then when I did this comparison, you see where comparing the pledge per citizen is only 0.05. So I think, there's still a lot of work to do with the loss and damage fund, but it was a great achievement and a good start for COP28. The next one was the tripling of the world's renewable capacity, and basically doubling of the energy efficiency gains. So 117 governments agreed to triple the world's renewable capacity. And this included UAE, Brazil, where I've been living for the past 5 years, and I've seen how much Brazil has been investing in renewable energy. Nigeria, Australia, Japan, Chile, and Barbados. However, this doesn't include China and India. And we know that as well, they're the biggest emitters. They have the biggest manufacturing capacity. So it'll be interesting to see what these two countries do in the coming future. And this is a massive investment and business opportunity for new energy technology companies. So you see a lot of the companies, even my company, SLB, we're doing a lot when it comes to new energy technology. We did a rebrand last year, and our focus is on technologies now and how to reduce emissions. And at the Energy Transition Hub at COP, we were showing our technologies. One of our biggest technologies right now is our methane sensors to detect methane emissions, which is also a topic at COP28. But we have to remember that, yes, we have these investments in place, and yes, we have this target we want to meet, but we have to look at it as energy addition and not necessarily a subtraction, because the population is growing and our energy needs will grow. So this renewable energy is basically meeting the demand of the future population growth. So we still need to figure out how to reduce emissions. So then we saw the tripling of nuclear power. And nuclear power has been a big topic within our industry for years, whether it's good, whether it's bad. There's a lot of discussions, a lot of arguments around nuclear power. And 20 nations signed a declaration to triple nuclear power capacity, and it included countries such as Canada. We saw Ghana in there, as well as China, the UAE. We know the UAE is far advanced in technologies. We saw the UK, USA, as well as Korea. So I think you saw some of the top players investing or deciding to promote nuclear power. So we just have to wait and see, to what extent this goes on. And even though nuclear power is a low carbon solution, it's a low emitter of CO2, it is not a renewable source. So the material itself is not inexhaustible. So it's something we could use short term, but on a short term to get our net zero, but long term, it is not feasible to continuously use nuclear power. So another big point was US closing coal power, and we know the effects of coal on climate change. We know the effects, how much CO2 it emits. So this was a big deal when the US commit to this, because they have more than 50 other nations in the Powering Past Coal Alliance, and this puts pressure on China to follow suit. And we know that the USA is one of the biggest, it is the third biggest coal fleet. So at least their closing coal power will lead to some reduction and will maybe push for China and other coal producing countries to follow suit. So the oil industry decarbonization charter. So 15 oil companies signed up to a decarbonization charter, which has 4 aims. One is to invest in new energy streams. 2 is to increase emission transparency. And as someone working in industry, I'm quite interested to see this, because when you work closely to regulators as well as with the operators, you see that the operators don't always follow the requirements of the regulatory bodies. So if there's an emission transparency, how accurate will this be? Will it be regulated by the regulators within that country? Will it be adjusted or, formatted in such a way to make the operators look good? So number 2 is quite interesting when we know there are politics within countries as well. 3 is to reduce energy poverty. And 4 is increasing alignment with broader industry best practices to accelerate decarbonization of operations and collectively reduce emissions intensity. And I think this is another interesting point as well. And we just have to wait and see what exactly this phrase means, or what exactly these oil companies plan to do with respect to number 4. So what can you do? I was talking to Shalom and I was saying that we need to start making changes as individuals, right? Change starts with us, and every little action adds up. And at least being aware of your CO2 footprint as a person, I think is important, and how you could reduce that. So there's this app, I think it's from the UN as well, called AW Word in support of Act Now. And I've been using this app, and sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes I don't for a while. But when I initially started using it, it was every day. And it would show me my CO2 footprint for the day. And then it would tell you how you could reduce. Or the next day you try to reduce. And there are like games or little competitions to motivate you to help reduce your CO2 footprint. So I think it's interesting for you guys to download this app and play around with it a bit, and you'll be surprised the little changes you might be able to make in your daily life to help with climate change. The other thing is to educate yourself, be hungry for knowledge. There's a lot of material out there on the internet right now, and a lot of free programs for youth right now. Like Shalom was just talking about the ARENA program, and lately, I've been seeing a lot of programs posted on LinkedIn dedicated just to youth and apply. Nothing is ever wrong with just applying and trying to lock in these programs. But the main thing is just to gain more experience, gain more exposure. And the UNCC has this website that I use sometimes with free courses. And there are a lot of courses on climate change, and you could actually go through and choose topics that are interesting to you. Because some people might be more focused on technology, some on policies, some on finance. So that's what I like about this. You could choose dedicated topics to study, or you could just be broad and learn as much as you can. And the next advice I would say is join societies and join communities. Being part of what technologies is one way. I'm part of SB. Within SB, which is the Society of Petroleum Engineers, we are doing a lot when it comes to climate change, even though it's an oil and gas society or petroleum society. And these are just some of the programs we have, which is SB Gaia. We have Energy for Me, where we go to schools, primary schools, or little kids and teach them about the energy industry, teach them about renewable energy. And it's amazing how their face light up when they see the experiments. So it helps get them interested as well into STEM, especially girls, right? SPKs, when there's a lot of flooding when I used to be in Trinidad, we'll actually go and do beach cleanups. We'll go to homes that were flooding and help clean or provide materials to help them clean. Or we will go and provide food, tin food, right? So SPKs is one way that we try to give back to communities and to the environment as well. And then within SP, there are technical sessions dedicated now to these topics, such as methane emissions, CCUS, hydrogen energy, in order to help pass information, especially to the young professionals and the students, to aid in their career development. So my advice would be to Google and find a society that's best suited for you. And, also try and build a network. LinkedIn is a good source. And before, like a year ago, before I was part of the year program, I felt so in the box when it came to climate change. And, I felt like it was like a topic nobody really wanted to discuss. Nobody was passionate about the way I'm passionate about it. And then after joining Yale and the first week of the program, and then spending time, I realized I needed to grow my network outside the oil and gas industry, outside energy industry, and connect with people that share the same passion I share, right? And, COP has helped a lot with that. And now I feel more motivated. I feel more passionate to know that, I'm just not just trying to fight for this alone. There are a lot of people, there are thousands of people in the world, and now there's more visibility around it. So one of my advice is try and build your network on LinkedIn and reach out to people with the same interests and just have discussions. Again, from the last year, I've learned the differences and challenges that we face from the global south compared to global north, or even countries. And, I think that collaboration is important within the energy industry, within the climate change space. We need to collaborate. We need to collaborate across sectors. We need to collaborate across countries. And the only way to happen is having open discussions and sharing knowledge. So that's one thing I would stress is on collaboration and building a network. So I want to thank Shalom for the invitation to present to you guys today and to talk. And this is my LinkedIn contact. Please feel free to connect and reach out at any time if you have any questions.
Wow, this is awesome. Well, I'm waiting for our emojis because I don't even know where to start from to summarize. This is great. Thank you so much. That's it. Because myself, the first time I had to speak with Cass was so inspiring, and I knew it that once I bring her here, you will be feeling the same energy that I'm feeling. So I see on the chat box that someone is already asking about the courses Wina mentioned that he didn't get like the screenshot of the courses. How can he get access to them?
I just
Okay.
put the link for the UNCC course.
Okay. And then this question is just from me. So I have a lot of young engineers here, like just graduate, and they are now trying to understand how do they get into the renewable energy space. So it's a question, do they focus on oil and gas skills, or do they have to come to the green energy skills? How do they build the balance being someone that's been in the oil and gas industry?
So at the end of the day, as engineers, we are engineers because we want to solve problems. It doesn't matter whether we are a petroleum engineer, chemical engineer, mechanical engineer. We're engineers because we have that strong understanding of math and the general physics, chemistry, whatnot, as well as wanting to solve problems. And I think this is something that's extremely important for oil and gas engineers, is that they just need to transfer their skills or transfer their skill set, because the skill set is not going to change. The same thing they're going to be looking for in renewable energy: someone who's good at problem solving, someone who's good at troubleshooting, good at the software programming or digital tools. For example, geothermal energy. We need the reservoir engineers. Nobody understands the reservoir better than reservoir engineers. The same for storing CO2 into reservoirs, whether it's for enhanced oil recovery or just storing CO2. Nobody understands the reservoirs better than a reservoir engineer or a geomechanical engineer, or so I'm not good at all the geology stuff, but so these are the engineers we need, right? Hydrogen energy, we need the process engineers. The process engineers understand process. They understand PNIDs, process flow diagrams, heat and mass balances. This is what you need as a hydrogen engineer. So it's basically, when you're doing your resume, if you're applying for a job in the energy industry or in renewable energy or whatever it may be, it's showing how your skills from oil and gas transfers to the energy industry. And also just look at the summary of the job description, use the job description to tailor your resume to that specific, how do I say, job code or job description.
Wow, that's amazing. And any more questions? Anyone can just raise up your hand and we'll take the question. I'll just leave 1 minute for that. Oh my, thank you so much, Cassandra. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
honoring our
All
invitation.
you
I'm
guys.
so glad you came. Checking again, final checks. All right. Thank you once more. Maybe if they're still preparing their questions, it's going to be on the chat box. So feel free to answer there. And okay, I think I saw one question earlier about the pledges. So someone was asking, these pledges are they the financial contributions that are already on ground, or are this like future like things that they have pledged that they are going to commit to later on in the future? Yeah.
So I wouldn't say commit. Commit is a strong word, but I think it's pledges they made, and now we have to see whether the companies and the countries that made these pledges follow through with it. So it's all going to be new initiatives. They're going to have to meet as countries, because they're countries that made pledges, and then they're companies that made pledges. So these companies will have to meet, and they'll have to start working towards it. And I remember the president kept saying it was about acting. So we have to see maybe at COP29 if they come and present what they did over the past year to meet these pledges. Are they progressing? Because I think we need to hold them accountable as well. You came to COP28, you said you're going to do this and that. We know who they are. So now, a year later, let's see what you've done.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're so honored to have you, Cassandra. Thank you so much. I will be moving on to the next section. I think this is like rounding up the sections, 2 more, and we are off to go. So the next on our panelist is one of our incredible ambassadors. And permits me to read her bio, and that's going to be Patricia Bequay. One of our incredible ambassadors that we're at COP28, giving us direct information, not just about the things that were happening in the Blue Zone. She was also able to represent us at diverse panels. So with very much honor, I'll be presenting to us Miss Patricia Odibia-Bekwe. She is a seasoned professional with a diverse skill set and over a decade of expertise. Her passion for environmental sustainability and climate justice advocacy has made her an invaluable contributor to Ghana's campaigns and events. Patricia holds leadership roles in both the nonprofit sector and the business world. She is seamlessly blending her marketing acumen with her dedication to sustainability. She is the founder and executive director for Debrief Foundation, a nonprofit that is advocating tirelessly for issues ranging from the dangers of ectopic pregnancy to reproductive health, climate change, and women's empowerment. She is affiliated with prestigious networks such as the Africa Cone Network, Africa Climate Movement of Movement, Coalition of Air Management, African Feminist Task Force Platform, wow, Global Grassroots Climate Leaders Network, Women in Climate Action Network, Renewables Technologies, and Don't Gas Africa Platform. Her unwavering commitment to environmental sustainability and climate justice fuels her voluntary engagement with various organizations and projects. Her contributions span a diverse range of initiatives, from advocating for climate change to renewable energy. She was trained by the Youth Climate Council Ghana as a young negotiator to follow negotiations on gender and capacity building at COP28. With a round of applause, please make welcome Ms. Patricia Bekwe for her section. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alom. I hope I can be heard, and
yeah,
for the sake of securing my internet so that it will be stable, I will be speaking off camera if that's okay.
That is, but you will permit us to have one picture with you at the end.
Yes, that is fine. Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity, and I mean, it's been a great day, a lot of great submissions from the previous panelists, and I think I don't know how you structured it, but from the first panelist to the current one is something that is, I mean, each panelist topics are building on the first ones, and so it's something that is very great, and great job to Renew Watts. So I mean, the other panelists have really talked about a lot of the outcomes of COP, and so I want to keep my very brief and talk about what actually transpired in the negotiation rooms for the tracks that I followed as a youth negotiator. So I followed capacity building and gender. And capacity building is something that is keen and dear to me because most of my work is being done at the grassroots level. And even I need capacity building, especially to be able to engage with people at the grassroots level in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation. And so this was actually my second COP. And the first COP I went as an observer, so it wasn't that tedious. But going in as a youth negotiator, it opened my eyes to a lot of things, and the fact that even when you are in the advocacy space or you are in the CSO space, you don't have to limit yourself to just advocacy on the ground. You need to also involve yourself in the negotiation processes to be able to also voice out. Because if you have the opportunity, like I got, because I was trained with a couple of young people from Ghana by government official to follow these negotiations. And it's a stepping stone, because once you take it serious, then you will be in the CSO space, but you will also be able to negotiate on behalf of your country and be able to make inputs into the decisions, and also make sure that you inculcate, make sure that your issues are being adhered to or being implemented at the grassroots level, because you are at the grassroots level and you understand what the people go through. So with the issues relating to capacity building, it wasn't something that was really dragged a lot. But when I get to gender, I noticed that the negotiations are diplomatic. It was like me looking at the two giant political parties in my country battling issues. So battling issues from the developed countries to the developing countries was really an eye-opener. So it's something that something that as a CSO, person from the CSO space need to also get involved. Now, going into the capacity building room, the most thing on the text that they actually dragged for a long time was the concern of funding. Because when the text came, so the previous from the previous text that they drafted, they mentioned that it was pivotal that the responsibility of raising of funds be on the developed countries. But then when the text came, it was not stated. And the developed nations were also arguing for more inclusive approach, suggesting that other capable developing countries should contribute as well. But the group, the African group and that of G77 were of the view that it has to be the developing countries. I mean, the most polluters should be the ones to pay. You cannot make a statement that some developing countries are capable, because developing countries, especially the African continent, are still struggling with their economies. And so you can look at maybe their GDP and say they have this kind of height, so they should be able to contribute. So that's what went back and forth, but the African group and then G77 was able to make their case, and finally they came to a conclusion and then reached a point and adopted the text that, I mean, in terms of capacity building, developed countries need to commit in terms of funds and in terms of even the training opportunities. And they also made a case, the African group also made a case that capacity building should be focused on the grassroots level, because when we talk about capacity building, most of the times you see it at the high levels being done, especially in the cities. But when you go to the grassroots level, people need to understand what the climate issues are. People need to understand what they are even doing as indigents of the communities in contributing to the climate menace. And so the capacity building, they stress that the capacity building should be trickled down to communities. And communities should be the first people to receive the training for capacity building. And so I think this is one of, it was one of the key highlights in terms of capacity building that as a grassroots advocate, I was very, very happy about, because I know the work that I do at the grassroots level and the trainings that I give when I get to the grassroots level. And I know how you get to the communities, and you get to know that people don't even know about what the climate issues are. And even those that know about it have little knowledge about it and do not even know how to go about it in terms of adapting or in terms of mitigating. And so it was a very key thing for me. Now, let me push and go to the gender. So the first thing that was talked about on gender was the review of the gender action plan and the Lima work program. And so it's just a minute. So the Lima work program is something that the first Lima work program on gender was established in 2014 to advance gender balance and integrate gender considerations into the work of parties and the secretariats in implementing the convention and then the Paris agreements, so as to achieve gender responsive climate policies and actions. And so there was the enhanced Lima Work Program had a 5-year, agreed on a 5-year term, which is ending next year. And so there's the need for parties to review that gender action plan next year. And I think parties were to submit make their submissions by next year, which some countries made a statement that because of the dates, the time span will not help parties to be able, or countries to be able to present a proper report. And so they needed time, a bit of time. So suggestions were made to push the timeline set for March next year to set for next year February to be pushed to March, so that countries can present their make their submissions by March 2024 for the review to be set to be done in July 2024 before the next COP, which is in November. And so majority of the parties agreed to that timeline, and then they moved on to the main focus of the issue that went back and forth because the drafts were about finance. There was a portion, a paragraph about finance, and just like the capacity building, developed parties were pushing for private finance into the gender work programs. And so the African negotiators were also pushing that they will not agree for private finance to be included, because communities and countries that are suffering, and gender and children and youth bear the brunt. You can't go and then say you are giving communities or countries that are already suffering loans from private entities with the expectation of getting interest out of it. And that will not help driving the change that we want on the ground. And so this had to go back and forth. And aside that, the draft text, after it has been done, one country was actually not there. And the next day when we had the session, they came to punch a lot of disagreement into almost all the paragraphs. And that text had to be just completely struck off for parties to go into an informal consultation without the chairs, so that they can be able to come to a compromise on each of the paragraphs that have been stated. But I think at the end of the week, there was still no agreement, because it went back and forth from the developed parties to the developing parties, and there was no agreement. So at the end of the day, the text that came out from COP on gender was the one that was actually sent to the COP presidency. And so it's an advanced version from the COP presidency that was has been posted on the website. And I was looking at it yesterday in preparation for this, and I noticed that the first draft text was about 12 paragraphs, and parties had issues from paragraph 9 to 12 until the other country came to punch holes into all the paragraphs. Now, the text that has been brought is up to 6 paragraphs, and going through it, I realized that there are certain key things that was in the first one that has been taken out. And so I think that it is very, very important in as much as we are doing our work at the grassroots level and being able to sensitize people on climate issues. It is very, very important as young people. It is very important also as grassroots advocates to get ourselves involved in these processes, because me being there for the first time has given me a whole a different perspective of how to even strategize my advocacy plans before I go to the community. Now, with all the information I have gathered, I am able to now look at other things in terms of gender. And then when I go to the grassroots, because my work is mostly at the grassroots level, and so I work a lot with women and teenagers and children, and so looking at that, I think it's changing a lot of it's making me change how I approach my advocacy at the grassroots level, and it has opened the door for me to even advance on my learning in terms of gender. And so I was even looking at the women's participation on statistics in the climate diplomacy. And I just looked at that of my country, which is Ghana. And I realized that from all the conferences, the level of the percentage of women participation is very, very low. And from 2008 to born June 2023, all the conferences, the head of delegation has been a man. And so this is now pushing me to learn more. And I am happy that Cassandra was able to also touch on the fact that we should be able to, there are a lot of platforms for free learning that we can tap on. And so it's pushing me to learn more on the tracks that I have decided to follow to enhance my work. And this is even pushing me to really advance, especially in the processes of the UNFCCC, and be able to even go into details into the Paris Agreement and that of the Kyoto Protocol, to be able to advance my knowledge in preparation for next year's COP. Because I want to be able to, in the near future, be able to call or be able to be selected to be a negotiator, to be able to speak on behalf of my country. Because once I am doing that, then it is easy for me to get the issues and be able to solve the issues or lobby for the implementation of these issues at the grassroots level where it needs to be. And even in terms of the capacity building, as it should be at the grassroots level, you know that whatever finance or whatever funds that will be dispersed in aid for capacity building will still go through the government. And so it is important that we know all these things and be able to follow and track which funds have been received on behalf of to conduct capacity building, and be able to speak on that and make sure that the grassroots benefits from this capacity building or these issues that we are talking about. Now, to end on my key highlights, I believe that echoing the importance of grassroots implementation and align with the African group's emphasis on community level action will see to it that communities that are facing the brunt of the climate change benefits. And in addition, it is highly recommended that developed countries lead in financing gender-related adaptation and mitigation measures without reference to private finance. And also countries, especially the African continent, should, governments of the African continent should ensure that whatever funds that are being received in mitigation or in building capacity at the grassroots level should be used for that intent purposes, so that even though Sandra mentioned that some countries, especially she said countries pledge to for nuclear, and even though nuclear it has least emits, it's still not a renewable source of energy. And so even if parties or African parties would want to use this, there should be a proper way of doing that. And capacity building needs to be done, especially at the grassroots level, even before these programs begin, so that the people in the community will not be able to face the harsh conditions of it, or will not have to then find a way to adjust or adapt to it, because whatever way we look at it, it still comes with other implications. And one thing my interest lies is also in health. And I was very happy that when COP28 had started talking about climate change and health, which is a good thing, because it's high time that we look at that as well. And me having interest in that is making me go into it and learn a lot about what I should expect in the coming days. So thank you very much once again, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Wow. Please, I'm waiting for the reactions. I feel like when COP is going to come to Africa, we should vote for Miss Patricia as the COP president, because you can feel the passion from the way she speaks. You can feel the interest and everything with it. You can feel it from her, right? And I just have a question about this discussion. And Miss Patricia, please give us like just a moment to take a picture with you, and then you can
okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. This is the main reason why I've always wanted to work with Miss Patricia, because our visions align when it comes to grassroots community. Our visions align when it comes to capacity building, and we are really like trying to drive renewable energy projects that will come up in the next year. So I'm very excited about that. And on the scope of what you've been saying about like the private finance and financing and the rest, I wanted to ask, when it comes to if it's not going to be private finance, what kind of financing will then be used to accelerate gender and capacity building? And just a little bit before we get into the GSTs, I think that's more like the question I wanted to ask. If it's not private financing, what else should be? Would it be grants, or what would it be?
So I think the main finance that the African team is pushing is for the developed countries that are the most polluters to commit, be more ambitious and commit, like make a bigger commitment. Because even when you look at the commitments for the loss and damage, even though commitments are being made in millions, but people have, these countries have already benefited in trillions in terms of they exploiting fossil fuels. And now you're telling countries that have the chance to also exploit that to develop their countries to say that they shouldn't. And so if you don't want us to exploit it, then you should be able to commit in trillions. And if you are committing in trillions, then this can then help us to then transition into the clean fuels that we are looking for. And so I think the issue is not to even bring in the private finance at all, so that developed countries can then be ambitious in their commitments.
Thank you so much, Tisha Bekoe. I'm so delighted for respect to your input and your takeaway from COP28. And I was listening, and it seems you're more like an all-rounder in the sense that you are in health, you are in sustainability, green energy, and all of that. And kudos to you. And also, Cassandra Dewon, I would say thank you also for the insights you gave to us regarding your experience with your Patricia and Cassandra and your experience respectively you had in COP28. And I also wish you guys good luck in going for the next COP. That will be next year. I wish you guys good luck. And also, you said something about being a negotiator. I would say it's going to be possible, and it will be possible for you to negotiate on behalf of your government, on behalf of your country. And I just make us proud, make Renewables Technologies proud. And I'll say thank you so much for honoring this debrief section. I'm so delighted. Thank you so much, Ms. Patricia Bekway. I'm so delighted. Thank you so much. And my dear friends
Thank
who
you
are
very
here,
much for having me.
welcome. And next on our last but not the least, okay, I would want to read out the bio for Ms. Bida Aye. She's a policy analyst with Forest Aid Organization, where she engages local farmers on forest conservation research rather, sustainable forest management, climate change, and the creation of alternative livelihood schemes for forest range communities. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Kwame Nkrumah University of Technology, correct? And is also a research and assistant to the Department of History and Political Studies at KNUST. Her research areas lie in public policy analysis, particularly with sustainable development policies and the SDG goals and their implementation. She is interested in people-centered adaptation as a youth climate negotiator. Bida accompanied the Ghanaian delegation and the African group of negotiators on the first ever Global Stocktake, GST. Bida, you're highly welcome to this wonderful debrief session. And we are so glad to have you here. So we want to have your take on the COP28 debrief and also what you also have for us, because I believe Cassandra, Patricia, Mujib, and Rashida, they've all overwhelmed us. I would say that they've overwhelmed us with a lot of information. So what information do you have for us, and what do you have to share and your takeaway from COP28? Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for that brilliant introduction. So, as you rightly said, I'm Vida. You can also pronounce it Vida. And yes, please, can you all hear me?
Vida, okay. Yeah, we can hear you actually.
Okay, so I would go on. So, the GST is basically a summary of the whole climate change journey for the past 5 years. So it will touch on mostly everything that all our wonderful speakers have said today. Even as I was listening to them, I realized that there's so much that I want to say that they have already said. And so as my colleague Patricia said, I will try and keep it brief as I possibly can. So like Patricia, I'm also a youth climate negotiator with Ghana. We both participated in the same program, that's the Youth Climate Governance Diplomacy and Negotiations Training. And we were sponsored by UNICEF and NGAYO under the YCC, that is the Youth Climate Council of Ghana. So I'm sure for those of us in the climate space, we already know what GST stands for, that is the Global Stocktake. But for the benefit of those of us who are not, I would like to reiterate what the Global Stocktake is and why it held such central focus at this year's COP. This year also happened to be my first COP, like Cassandra, and it was quite eye-opening. I think the experience from when you hold an observer's badge and when you hold a party or party overflow badge is quite different because of the level of access it gives you and also the structure. So because of the youth climate negotiated training that we went through, I arrived at COP with a very clear focus. I knew what I was going to do. I knew where I was going to. I knew which people to speak to if I had any issues, because we accompanied the Ghanaian delegation. And so for me, that was not my issue at COP. My issue at COP was how strenuous the whole activity was. It was quite unexpected, because you hear every year people go for COP. In my country, it's a very politicized activity. People go for COP and it looks like they are going to enjoy, but you get on the ground and you realize that there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of people are working. So to look at the GST, that's the Global Stocktake, is essential component of the Paris Agreement. When you take the Paris Agreement, which is one of the agreements under the UNFCCC, so you have the UNFCCC Convention, the Paris Agreement, then the Kyoto Protocol. Under the Paris Agreement, under Article 14, it states that after every 5 years, that is the conference of the parties, serving as the meetings of the parties to the Paris Agreement, would meet periodically to take stock of the implementation of the Paris Agreement and assess its collective progress towards achieving the purpose of the agreement. So basically, the Paris Agreement was agreed upon to effect a particular change in the lives of the parties that agreed to it. Therefore, the Article 14 of the Paris Agreement is essentially to see how far these parties have come in their implementation process. So it takes into account adaptation, mitigation, means of implementation, under which falls finance, technology development and transfer, capacity building. And then it also takes across cross-cutting considerations, as in there are other topics that parties will find it difficult to place directly under adaptation or mitigation or even means of implementation, which will therefore be placed under these areas. So let me just jump on right into the summary of the GST, that's the first ever global stocktake, and then I'll move on to my personal observations as a youth climate negotiator. So as have already been stated by my co-speakers, the GST stated that it emphasized actually the need to triple renewable energy capacity and double energy efficiency improvement globally by 2030. This included measures to phase down unabated coal power and transition away from inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. It will be worth noting that the AGN, that's the African Group of Negotiators, did not actually agree with the term phase out or phase down, which became a rather diplomatic issue at COP, when parties were siding with either phase out or phase down, and then gradually they agreed to transition away. So another conclusion of the final draft of the Global Stocktake, that's the GST, was that parties were encouraged to set more ambitious emission reduction targets in order to ensure that the planet aligns away or moves away from the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit that is on our climate change. That is the peak at which we are supposed to get to ensure that the planet continues to remain habitable in their nationally determined contributions, that's their NDCs, by 2025. So in 2 years from now, that's COP30, parties are supposed to come up with NDCs that are very ambitious, that set realistic and highly overachievable targets towards their greenhouse gas emissions. And a historic move that took place at COP, the COP president put his foot down the first day of COP actually and operationalized the loss and damage funds, which has already been stated that we have about $700 million worth of pledges that has already been pledged to it. This was quite a historic move, because usually parties would have gone into negotiations and would have spent a whole lot, especially the first week, going back and forth on what exactly the loss and damage fund should entail, even though it had already been done at Sharm el-Sheikh in COP27. But the COP president put his foot down and operationalized the loss and damage fund with its historic 700 million pledge, which has already been stated nowhere near enough in addressing the issues that are currently facing climate communities. We are looking at over 100 billion annually to solve climate-related issues and crisis, adaptation and mitigation levels. 700 million, I would like to say it's commendable, but we know they can do better. Developed countries can do better, especially taking into account their historic emissions to greenhouse gases. So at this COP, there were quite a few things that parties were hoping to agree on, but most of these issues have either been suspended, postponed, or pushed to COP29. Key among them is the climate finance, because as Patricia said earlier, parties couldn't agree on the definition of climate finance. Developing countries mostly wanted climate finance to be financed given by developed parties, whilst most developed parties were also advocating for climate finance that would also come for private investors. And this would not bode well for African countries or even most developing countries across the world, in Asia, in Europe even, because as she said rightly, you cannot give loans to needy people at the expense of their survival just because you want profit, when the issues that they are facing, the climate issues that they are facing currently, historically, you are responsible for. So even still under the climate finance, the GST acknowledged the Green Climate Fund, which had received significant pledges at about 12.8 billion. The figures are very commendable, but they are nowhere near what these countries need to address the issues that they are facing. This year, 2023, has been recorded as the hottest year in history. And it has come up along with its own bushfires, with tsunamis, with earthquakes, with hurricanes. There's been so much climate disaster that has taken place this year that the figures are nowhere near enough to combat it. And the institutionalization of the carbon or the agreement of the carbon market funds were also postponed to COP28 at Azerbaijan because parties couldn't agree on emission reduction rates among themselves. So much needed finance that could have, for this whole year, as in from now until COP29, been used to help nations address their climate issues and even their development issues, has been postponed for a whole year. And also under mitigation, the mitigation work program, which was launched at COP28, COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, will continue until 2030 with 2 global dialogues taking place each year. These are all summaries of the GST because bear in mind it's a 21-page document with 196 paragraphs. This wasn't even the document that was initially started. We were initially working with a 200-page, 28-page document and about 200 paragraphs. So under empowerment and inclusivity, the GST emphasized the importance of empowering stakeholders. Listed stakeholders here as women, children, refugees, migrants, disabled people through the Action for Climate Empowerment, which was passed at COP28. So the GST also spoke about enhanced transparency frameworks, as in it laid down the groundwork for implementing the Paris Agreement with new transparency reporting and new tools. So, speaking about my personal observations at this year's GST, I noticed that the GST history started in 2018. So, parties were aware that by 2021, they would have to start technical dialogues and assessments about the GST getting to 2023. So for the past 2 years, actually, parties have had dialogues, they've had technical assessments, they've had meetings on how to come up with where they have gotten so far. How are parties collectively working together towards adaptation, towards mitigation? And the findings of it was that we were nowhere near where we were supposed to be. The parties, in terms of adaptation, in terms of mitigation, even in terms of meeting the 1.5 degrees Celsius peak, were nowhere near. Initially, the IPCC brought out a document that we were supposed to keep it under 2 degrees Celsius. But even 2 degrees Celsius is very warm. And so countries or parties were therefore encouraged to keep it even below 1.5 degrees Celsius, which would require a lot of reduction drastically in their greenhouse gas emissions. But the technical assessments and dialogues found out that parties were nowhere near in achieving this. One thing I also noticed in my negotiation rules, because as a negotiator from Ghana, Ghana belongs to two blocks in negotiation. So the blocks are essentially groups of parties with common interests who advocate for their interests unifiedly. So we have 198 countries or parties rectifying to the Paris Agreement. And if each of these parties were to speak, negotiations sometimes take anywhere from 1 hour to 6 hours with breaks in between. It's a very tedious process. And even sometimes a lot of parties still do not get to speak, even with the time that is given. So we realize that it's better if parties speak in blocks, and then individual parties will either support and add their own suggestions or just support. So Ghana is part of the AGN, that's the African Group of Negotiators, then the G77 plus China. So a day in the life of a youth negotiator following GST, you would get to the blue zone very early. The queues were very long, just to say the least, looking for a much better word for it, but the queues were very long. You would get to the blue zone, you have AGN preparation meeting in the morning, then from there you are moving to AGN GST meetings, then you're moving to G77 GST meetings, then you're moving to the joint contact group itself, then you are breaking for INF meetings, then you are moving to another AGN meeting, then the G77 plus China coordination meeting. So you notice that all of these blocks also have their individual negotiators. Aside, for instance, Ghana as a party has people following GST, adaptation, mitigation, technology, finance. AGN also as a block has people following GST, adaptation, mitigation, finance, and all the other negotiation tracks. So you realize that all of these negotiations feed into each other. And the GST being a global stock take, essentially taking stock of all of the processes under the Paris Agreement. Mainly, we just divide them into four: the adaptation, mitigation, means of implementation, and then the cross-cutting issues, which would fall anywhere under the AIDS or gender or any of these issues that cut across mitigation and adaptation. So all of these meetings feed into each other. You get to the negotiation room and realize that you spent about 12 hours the day before or 8 hours the day before negotiating a text, only to find out that your co-facilitators did not even include the text that was added to it. We had that happening in one of our GST meetings. So we negotiated on a text, on the first text that was brought from the co-facilitators. Usually our co-facilitators, you have one from the developing South and the other one from the developed North. So the global South and then the global North, to ensure that all parties have, or developing countries and developed countries are able to meet a middle ground in terms of the draft text that is produced, and no one party imposes their interest or their views over the other. So we spent 8 hours that particular day, I could quite well remember, negotiating text, only to come early the following morning. We left there around 11:30 p.m. that day. To come the following morning, and the co-facilitators informed negotiators that they did not include the text, anything at all, and that they were submitting the draft that parties had spent 8 hours negotiating over. They were submitting that text to high-level meetings. It was quite a funny situation to see. Parties were not having it. They were not having it at all, because what the Global Stocktake does is that, because it takes into account how far we have come in adaptation, in mitigation, in finance, in response measures, in capacity building, in even technology transfer, it is going to inform subsequent GST. Parties also made it quite clear that the GST text is not going to replace the Paris Agreement. So you find that in a lot of the GST text, they make references to the Paris Agreement, to the Convention, to the Kyoto Protocol, to decisions made at CMA, to ensure that the text in and of itself doesn't become a driving force for climate change, adaptation, and mitigation efforts. but it just shows us where we have gotten to and what we need to do on our way going forward. So that's just some of the few things that I noticed. But after the first week of high intense joint contact groups and informal negotiation, the next week was high level meetings. So that is when we realized that they could actually compress the text. It seems that we as individual negotiators of our parties were just dragging out the issues. Once the text goes to high level meetings, any draft that came out was reworked and compressed, because sometimes under one paragraph you have 4 to 8 different options that parties cannot agree on. And so all of these options, therefore, would need to be taken into account in the draft text. But at the end of the day, my observations as COP were that despite activities going on in the blue zone, in pavilions, in exhibitions at the green zone, activities center, as in the center of activities at COP are negotiations. Negotiations are what drive party movements. Negotiations are what informs what even civil society organizations in these parties are going to do. So as Pat rightly said, it's imperative on anyone who has an interest in climate change, even if you're not going to be there physically for negotiations, you should follow negotiations as they are going on, because whatever these parties finally agree on is what is binding on all parties, not legally though, but that is what parties are going to be referring to in subsequent texts. So we had one big controversy with the GSP text just as soon as it was adopted. So the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, came in right after the text was gravelled that the GSP text was adopted in their absence, and that even though transition away from fossil fuel for the first time in 30 years of climate negotiation, we had a text that stated emphatically that we are going to move away from fossil fuels, knowing over the years that fossil fuels is contributing majorly to greenhouse gas emissions. Countries have still not said anything about this because, well, we are an oil-driven market. We consume so much oil, we consume so much gas, and therefore, the countries that deal in this, the countries that have their fingers in this pie, have been hesitant to address it. So, to many, that was a big achievement for this year's COP. But the AOSIS group said, we know this, the science have said it. So the 10 transition away from fossil fuels does not do anything to help them. Bear in mind, these are the communities most affected by climate change because they are coastal areas or they are communities that lie directly in the sea. Therefore, any change in sea weather, the sea temperatures, or even in sea levels drastically affects them. Some islands are being overcome by the sea, they are being taken back by the sea. And so communities in these areas will have to move. Therefore, communities in these areas would have to move away from the island because now your island is part of the sea. So transitioning away from fossil fuel is still not enough to these communities. But the ADN group, for instance, wanted a phase down because a total phase out of fossil fuel would ensure that developed countries continue to develop, and developing countries who are now just trying to access fossil fuel funds to boost their socio-economic development are now being told to transition away from fossil fuel in order to try renewable energy. That is why the need for more funds, as in more pledges by this party, not just the pledges, but actually redeeming of those pledges is highly important for developing countries, because if you tell us to transition away from the use of fossil fuel, these developed countries developed their countries by fossil fuel subsidies. They became who they are by fossil fuel subsidies. And historically, they are the ones who have gotten us to where we are currently with climate change, because they have contributed the most to greenhouse gas emissions. Now you are telling countries that are coming up to transition away from fossil fuel or to phase out fossil fuels totally. How do these countries therefore also boost their socio-economic development, thereby even widening the gap between developed and developing countries? So yes, that is my little observations about this year's GSP, the first of its kind, in COP33, we'll be having the second GSP. Before that, at COP31, we'll start technical dialogues and assessments on the next GSP. So, yeah, I think I would end it here. Thank you so much for having me.
Wow, this is so informative and this is in-depth, well detailed, and covering all sections. So like I posted one question and I have Mr. Tai will post another one. My question was, how do we get to participate in the negotiations virtually? Because it seems like if you're not on ground or COP, it's very hard to interact and, you know, be a part of the negotiation. So what do you have for, what do you think we should do?
Okay, so this year, COP28, they actually opened platforms for virtual participants to register for COP. So even for those of us who were on grounds following negotiations, there were some meetings that were so high level that the rooms were small, or even some informal meetings that had very small rooms. And so these meetings were broadcast virtually. So some of the meetings that I attended, I had to sit outside, log onto my phone or my laptop and access these meetings. So even though you cannot, we need more people at COP, that's true. The number this year was, I think, over 90,000 or 80,000. But this is representative of 8 billion people. If you were to do a data analysis with a sample size of 8 billion, population of 8 billion, you won't take 80,000 because you will say that you will not be able to generalize it. So 80,000 people are, it's a lot. Yes, it's true. But it's representative of 8 billion people. So it's nowhere near where it should be. It's not even 1% of our total population. So you can't still follow COP virtually. I think this year they registered about 3,000 virtual participants. So even if you are not on grounds, you can still be in the know. Or even if you are not able to join virtually because of sometimes your schedule, work, and even time difference, you can go to the website, the UNFCCC website, and download documents, just as you did with the GSP text. Download documents even as they come out so that you know what parties are agreeing to, especially if you work in the climate change space. Because at the end of the day, these are what the parties are going to work on, and it's going to directly influence you if you work in that space.
Yeah, that's true, because I wanted to even follow up with like where we could see the sections, but since you already mentioned the website, I guess it's the same website with the COP and also the UNFCCC. So once we're there, we'll just try and keep sharing some of that. And then the other question is, are there timelines to the commitment made at COP28?
Sorry. So these timelines are not binding. There's no legal entity to hold parties to this timeline. For instance, the GSP text stated that parties should have ambitious nationally determined contribution goals by 2025. As at 2023, there are still some countries that do not even have nationally determined goals at all. But yes, so the text is saying that countries should move on to highly ambitious NDC. So even though the text will state timelines, because there's nothing legally binding these entities to the timelines, parties are at liberty to do what they want to do because the negotiations are party driven. So if a party decides to abstain from it, there's actually nothing you can do to that party. So we have, I think, to some of the agreements, either the Kyoto Protocol or the Paris Agreement, we have a very famous or a developed country that's just an observer. So we are saying we should reduce greenhouse gases by this amount at this time. That party, that country that is contributing to greenhouse gases is an observer. So it does not have any obligations whatsoever to contribute to greenhouse gas emission reductions at the end of the day.
Truly, the COP has always played political. It's always very diplomatic, and some of their conversations are usually very diplomatic in the way they're doing.
It really is.
Yeah. I'm still wondering why those commitments are not legally binding, even as we have identified it a long time ago. People have, kept pinpointing the reasons why we keep failing in our ambitions, tying it back to the reason that these commitments are not legally binding. Yet, progress hasn't been made on that part. But I'm so grateful that you joined us on this call. I just wanted us to take a moment and turn on our videos for a quick photo with all of us. I know this is not even half of the people that joined the call, but thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Ms. Vida, for your time. It was such an impactful section, and I'm very sure a lot of us that didn't know so much about the GSTs were able to gain knowledge about what the GSTs were about and even how to be negotiators. And I hope being a negotiator doesn't necessarily mean you must be in the policy space or the business space or the law space. That's open to everybody, right?
Yes, please. It's open to everybody. But because you would have to have at least some sort of training before, advise that you join. For instance, they have the Youth Negotiators Academy. So you can join an organization like that, and it's what it does is that it trains you for negotiations.
Okay.
So even before you get to ground, you know what you are going to do. And because negotiations are party driven, if you are not there with a party or a country, you can't follow negotiations. You can come in with an observer's badge though, but you will not be able to speak on behalf of your country because negotiations are country driven. Yes. So that's the only drawback to it. Because negotiations are party driven, you would need to, if you want to speak for a country, you would have to be with that country. But you can come in as an observer and watch all that is going on with an observer's badge. If there's room in that space, or if there's space in that room that the negotiation is going on for you, you can come in, have a seat, and then listen to all that is going on. But you cannot speak on behalf of the party because the party has not delegated you to speak on their behalf.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. Okay, summary of the presentation of findings at COP. Yes, I'm going to be speaking to all of our delegates, all of our panelists. Yeah, they are delegates, of course. They are delegates at COP to help us with the presentation slides. And I'm going to be sharing that through the emails of those that were registered for the event. So thank you so much for joining this call. I'm still asking us to please turn on our camera so I can just take a quick photo with a smile. Oh, I see lovely smiles already. I see lovely smiles already. Just want to take a quick photo with all of us, and then we'll be ending it for today. Thank you so much, Brian, for turning on your camera. Just wait a little bit for some other people to turn on their photos, and we'll just take the final screenshot because I have been taking pictures all along. So I'll be sharing that as well. Okay. And we'll be also sending the LinkedIn handles for all of the participants, all of the panelists that spoke to us today. So you can connect with them. Some of the programs that they've been on incredible programs too. So you can always feel free to reach out to them, and they can even tell you how they even got to COP itself. I think that they are also willing to do that. Yes, they are also willing to do that. All right, so with a smile, do we do cheese, or do we do climate change, or do we do COP?
I think cheese is outmoded. So maybe we can do COP.
Oh, so is it
COP updates?
COP what? COP updates.
COP updates.
Oh, so on the count of 3, we'll do COP updates. So 1, 2, 3.
COP updates.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm taking another picture and yet another one. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Miss Patricia. Thank you, Sir Bami Bright. Thank you so much, Mr. Abdul. Thank you, Taiwo, for joining. Thank you, Ms. Vida. Thank you, Stella. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ademico. This is actually the end of the COP28 debrief. So I'm very happy that we came out en masse to see this program. Yes, I also believe it was a very insightful program. So thank you so much. Look forward to your emails. We'll be sending a lot of the presentation slides once we've gathered them from the panelists, and we'll also be sharing the recording of the section. We will share with you any further documents, including the GST text that we have spoken on. We'll be sharing all of that across through our emails. So thank you very much. Do have a lovely evening, morning, and afternoon for some of us that's just getting started with the day. So have a nice day, everyone. Thank you once again for joining. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma. Thank you so much, ma.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay. So you can end the section now.